Good evening, and welcome to this session on ancient Myanmar. And for our Myanmar viewers, Mingala Bashin, I'm Heidi Tan, and it's my pleasure to introduce my colleagues Thorzin and Omar Myo. Today, we will make 3 presentations, and in the interest of time, instead of taking questions at the end, we will have a few minutes for some informal reflections. As a museologist with a background in art history and curating Southeast Asian collections, I'm interested in the diverse cultures of ancient Myanmar and how we have come to understand them through materials currently exhibited at the British Museum's Burma to Myanmar exhibition, as well as other exhibitions on Myanmar in recent years. I will also draw on objects encountered in temple museum displays, which are interesting for the way they tell us about how local communities view their ancient past. Archaeologist Thorzin will then introduce the early and diverse urban centres that developed across present-day Myanmar. He's interested to look in particular at cross-cultural connections as evidenced by the art of the first millennium, and like me, will draw on further examples that have been exhibited in recent times. And finally, cultural heritage practitioner Omar Myo will introduce the cultural landscape of Bagan, a preeminent site associated with a glorious history of the first Burma rulers. She will discuss the current challenges of managing this ancient site, including the impact of tourism, climate change, and not least the fact that many of Bagan's Buddhist temples are pilgrimage sites of national importance. In our aim to address ancient material, we are mindful that cultural diversity is emphasized in the exhibition Burma to Myanmar, and the impact of this diversity and the intra-regional nature of cultural exchange is evidenced throughout Burmese history. So what do we mean by ancient? We refer to the first millennium of the Common Era, as we'll see in a moment. However, popular notions of the past in Myanmar are rooted in oral traditions, the legends that were recorded in chronicles, informed, for example, by early Buddhist traditions that were brought over by Sri Lankan monks or retold by traders and combined with local lore. Many of the temples base their history in these stories and see their past as contemporary with the Buddha, who is believed to have lived in northern India between the mid-6th to the mid-5th century BCE. In some stories, the Buddha visited Myanmar during his lifetime, and his presence for many is still felt when they visit the temple. So it feels almost impossible not to consider these oral traditions, given their presence in so much of Myanmar's living heritage. A note here about contemporary place names. We use the term Myanmar, the name of the country, its main language, and the nationality of its citizens, as well as other place names that were changed as a matter of government policy after 1989. It's worth noting that the origin of Myanmar itself is an ancient term. The name Myanmar is attributed to a stone inscription of the 12th century. The name Burma, however, was the term used by the British who colonized the country from 1824 to 1948. It's worth noting for a moment here that the basis for the art historical and archaeological evidence that we present comes from research undertaken since colonial times, the period of 1824 to 1948 and after. And much of that is revisited in recent exhibitions on Myanmar held in the past decade. The British Museum's approach to Burma and Myanmar addresses cultural diversity, somewhat similar to the 2 shows organized in 2014 in Stuttgart and Munich. However, those had a strong ethnographic feel and an emphasis on Buddhism and popular religion, including the Nat worship, the local spirit worship. This was a time when Myanmar had started to open up for global trade and cultural exchange, including major loans of early sandstone and bronze sculptures from Myanmar's national museums, which traveled for the first time to New York for the Metropolitan Museum's Lost Kingdoms exhibition and the Asia Society's Buddhist Art of Myanmar in 2014 and 2015, respectively, followed by the Asian Civilizations Museum's Cities and Kings exhibition in Singapore in 2016. We'll cite some examples of these in relation to works in the current exhibition, which are drawn heavily from UK museums. So here's a chronological table on the left, which gives us a sense of the scope of overlapping developments across the different regions of Myanmar during the first millennium CE. And that's the period we're looking at across those regions. And the map on the right illustrates the lay of the land, with Rakhine State on the west coast, the Pew occupying the central and upper Myanmar region, the Mon predominantly in the south, or lower Myanmar, and the Burma communities in the central plains, overlapping mainly with the Pyu, whose culture was probably absorbed by the Burma, who remain the majority ethnic group today. The direction to Bodh Gaya in northeast India here is just to highlight the importance of Indian influence in the first millennium, as Buddhism and Hinduism found their way to Myanmar through a two-way exchange of goods and the work of traveling monks. Bodh Gaya had special significance as the place where the Buddha attained enlightenment, seated under a Bodhi tree. It takes 8 hours to travel by fishing boat up the Caledon River, pictured here, to Mrabu, the town nearest to the sites of ancient Rakhine culture. And you can see a map there on the right of the region. These were centered on the sites of Danyawadi and Vaisali, which were originally walled cities. Inscriptions dated as early as the 5th century indicate that royalty supported both Buddhist and Hindu religions. The inscriptions were often in the ancient language, Sanskrit, the Indian language, Sanskrit, and these mention the making of Buddha images in a variety of materials, as well as the donation of numerous stupas. It's thought also that rulers exchanged gifts with Sri Lanka and intermarried with Indian royalty. Today, very little evidence remains at these sites. Stone sculptures of guardian deities are kept on and around the terraces of the Chowkdol Mahamuni Temple, northeast of Danyawadi, pictured here on the left. And the Temple Museum houses a collection of stone sculptures, including Hindu deities and reliefs like this example on the right, which illustrate stories of the Buddha's life. Due to insurgency in the region and access to this remote area, these early works have not been part of the exhibition loans mentioned earlier. Relatively little research has been undertaken or published compared to other regions, and so more research is needed to understand how these early centers relate to the Mrabu culture that came to prominence later in the 16th century. Today, the ancient history of the site is more usually associated with Chowkdol Mahamuni Temple, home of the famous Mahamuni Buddha that was taken away by the Burmese king Budopia in 1784. The small Buddha to one side of the main shrine is highly venerated, you see it here on the left, and was perhaps a model for the Mahamuni, as it is believed to have been cast just before its larger sibling. The auspiciousness of the Mahamuni Buddha, which is bathed, perfumed, and venerated daily, the figure on the right, comes from the belief that it was brought alive by the Buddha himself, literally breathing his own life into the figure after it had been cast. So, according to Chinese sources, the Pyu, or the Piao as they were known, were recorded as early as the 4th century of the Common Era. They controlled 9 cities and over 290 tribes. The capital was also described as the city of the Buddha's relics. This was an inland culture with ties to India, China, and neighboring Thailand, a language that was part of the Tibeto-Burman family, and extensive remains of walled cities, initially at Baitano, then Sri Kshetra, the largest, which had a circumference of 14 kilometers, so the wall is 14 kilometers long, and Halin, much further north in the region of Sagaing. You can see in the top right corner a map of those 3 sites. The Pyu were practicing Buddhists, although Hinduism and the worship of local spirits and ancestors probably coexisted. Remains of ritual sites, such as the Boboji stupa at Sri Kshetra, at the center there, demonstrate a significant investment by patrons. Thought to be the oldest stupa that is still worshipped today, the 46-meter-tall stupa was probably a major pilgrimage center since ancient times. This illustration includes the stupa adorned with a cloth offering made in recent times by devotees. It contains thousands of clay tablets of the Pyu period within its relic chamber, as well as gold and silver sheets and coins. Other ruined relic chambers, notably the Kimba Mound, revealed large quantities of metal objects, including a rare silver casket and a text inscribed on 20 gold leaves. Silver coins have also been found in abundance, distributed widely through trade. Tozinlat will say more about some of these kinds of materials. The coins here at the lower right image, in the center and the lower section of the photo, were the Pyu coins, and they were found in a monastery museum, Rabu, which I visited some years ago, were no doubt donated in more recent times. Cast copper alloy figures and finely crafted utensils, such as this lobed bowl with peacock motif, demonstrate artistic and technological advancements by this time. The seated figure on the left of the future Buddha, known as Maitreya, was apparently popular at this time. but the size and weight of the cast metal and attention to detail suggests it was a significant donation. The bowl is made of sheet silver and is stylistically very similar to enshrined wares found in China. However, their significance and site of production remain unknown. Suffice to say, the North must have posed a constant threat, as the Pew are thought to have declined after invasions by the Nanchao of Yunnan in southwest China and the rise of the Burma at Bagan around the 9th century. These examples of Pew Buddha images are interesting as well, since, like the bowl, they too were collected by local communities, and these two images continue to be venerated. Both have been gilded, which is a popular merit-making ritual. When one applies gold leaf to an image, this offering is considered an act of generosity, a good deed, and practicing good deeds earns one merit, or kuto. Earning merit is believed to bring a better rebirth, and subsequent lives that get better and better will eventually lead one to nirvana. Interestingly, the standing Buddha continues to be venerated in the gallery at the National Museum in Yangon. Its display within a shrine has hopefully reassured the community who handed it over that it has remained ritually active. The seated image on the right is displayed in a temple museum and has an added attribute, a recent permanent marker ink inscription in red, referencing the legendary Pew King Dutabang, with the date of his donation equivalent to 442 before Common Era. This reflects the ongoing popular belief in the legend of the Buddha's visit to this region during his lifetime around the mid-6th century BCE, when he landed on a nearby mountain and prophesied the rise of Sri Kshetra under this ruler. Now, unlike the inland Pew, the Mon lived along the coastal region of Lower Myanmar. And you can see in the map on the right there, the area which is today known as the Mon state. Oral histories and archaeological evidence suggest that the Mon arrived in successive phases over several millennia and into the early centuries of the Common Era in the Delta area south of Yangon, around Patong, and southwards through the region known as Mon State. It is believed that Mon ancestors arrived from different regions in southern India, and one of the country's important foundation myths tells of how two Mon brothers brought the Buddha's hair relics back to deposit in the Shwedagon Pagoda. Today, this is the most revered pilgrimage site, along with Golden Rock, which you can see illustrated at the center here, which is in the Bago region, and also the Mahamodi Pagoda, which was mentioned earlier. The historical record of the Shwedagon suggests it dates to around the 15th century, but Chaityo, or Golden Rock, is even more evocative of an ancient pilgrimage site. While Thorzinlat will discuss examples of the Buddhist and Hindu statuary associated with the Mon in Lower Myanmar, I have chosen to feature Chaityo, or Golden Rock, which is a Mon name that literally refers to the pagoda on a hermit's head. The Mon myth about the site probably dates to around the 16th century at the earliest, but there are numerous retellings thereafter. The core story, however, speaks of the Buddha's visit to Patong to give his hair relics to local hermits. A late 19th century version tells of how one of the hermits kept a few relics in his own top knot and was eventually persuaded to enshrine them in a large rock, cleverly chosen by Tejamin, the local spirit ruler, because it resembled the shape of the hermit's head. The myths not only revere the rock, but also Patong, where Pali scriptures were collected and Buddhism was cultivated by the Mon, until taken by Bagan rulers in the 11th century. And finally, the Burma culture. It is in the arid central plains that flank the Ayeyarwady River, the area now known as Bagan, that the first Burma dynasty ruled. Buddhism, as just mentioned, was introduced through the Mon, but the first ruler, King Anuruddha, also sought relics from Sri Lanka, which are said to be enshrined in 4 boundary stupas, including the Shwedagon illustrated here. Bagan also had close relations with Bodh Gaya in northeast India, and the 13th century replica of the Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya was built. The motif of the temple's recognizable tower is found impressed on clay tablets such as this. Made as acts of merit, historical clay tablets have been found at ancient sites and collected by local communities who sometimes gild them, as seen in these examples at the Shwedagon Pagoda Museum in Yangon. Finally, cast copper alloy images such as this seated Buddha at the British Museum's collection further reflect Indian stylistic influence from Bihar and northeast India, Note the slim-waisted torsos, clinging robes, and the fine facial features, such as incise, arched eyebrows and pointed chin. And the seated posture with right hand pointing downwards, calling the earth to witness the good deeds done in the Buddha's previous lives, became a prominent motif associated with the Buddha's enlightenment at this time. Buddha images were commissioned by royal donors, and those that became particularly powerful were venerated widely, like the Mahamuni Buddha. In more recent times, patronage of the temples at Bagan by high-ranking officials has made certain sites and Buddha images, like this Alodorpi or wish-fulfilling Buddha on the left, extremely famous. The need for ritual propitiation is starkly revealed by the fact that the original sandstone image housed at the Bagan Archaeological Museum did not originate at the Alodorpi temple. Its plaster replica was installed at the site after renovation in the early 90s, where it is constantly gilded and worshipped. Museum curators who worshipped the original image at the museum educated their foreign counterparts so that rituals were conducted before and after its travels to New York and then to Singapore for exhibitions in 2015 and 2016. And these rituals were undertaken and organized by curators to ensure its safe passage. Well, I hope this brief introduction conveys a sense of the culturally diverse nature of Myanmar's ancient origins. And now Thorsin Lutt will share further thoughts on the regional commonalities and differences in the art of the early urban settlements.
In today's webinar, I'm going to present a little bit about early urban center in Asian Myanmar and the material cultures. Myanmar is a diverse nation full of unique cultural identities. The territory of Myanmar we can see today was born out of British colonization. The nation we have today is composed of different political entities which had not been formed as a single nation state before. But today I will use the term Myanmar to refer to the country we see here. So the first millennium Myanmar from the 1st to the 10th century CE was composed of urban centers and city-states and predominantly Buddhist associated with Hindu and other religion as well. They were important for the export and the exchange of artistic and religious ideas to and from India and China to Southeast Asia. In Western Burma, associated with Rakhine people, we have the Nyawadi and Wedali from the 400s and from the 500 CE. Rakhine was not part of Central Myanmar until the attack in 1784 by the Burmese king Bodapaya. 40 years later, in 1824, after the First Anglo-Burmese War, the Burmese handed it over to the British. Here is a picture of religious ruin in the Nyawadi built using sandstone. Sandstone is the most commonly used material in Western Myanmar. In Lower Myanmar, we have cities such as Bagan, Jakarta, and Patong associated with the Mon people and the Dwaravadi culture of Thailand. Here's a picture of the laterite citadel wall in Soktok, northern Mon state. In Central Myanmar, from 200 BCE to 900 CE, we have few ancient city flourished, such as Paitano, Hanlin, Dikitia, and Myanmar. These few cities were inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List due to their importance for religious and artistic exchanges in the region. Here is a picture of Boboji Pagoda in Dikitia. In Eastern and Northern Myanmar as well, we also have early Mauritian kingdom, which could have exchanged ideas with China and Yunnan. But only a few archaeological expeditions are done to most of the areas, so we can only talk about something vague and unsure. Here is a pictures of the session featuring the Asian Myanmar in the Burma to Myanmar exhibition at the British Museum. The Archaeological Survey of Burma was established in the early 1900s under the British rule and had done research with a focus on central Myanmar and culture like Pew and Bagan. Although other people and scholars like Dr. E. Sharma and Sir Richard Temple did some research on Rakhine and Mong cultures in Western and Lower Myanmar. It was quite small compared to the research done by the Archaeological Survey for the Central Burmese sites. The British did not even collect many objects from other culture as reflected by this display full of Central Burmese objects. After independence and under various military coups, the Burman majority culture has been promoted over time by using archaeology. The state school history curriculum is made using the chronology of Burman culture, ignoring the culture of the minoritized groups. Although the archaeological research is done in other regions, they are now very well maintained compared to the Central Burmese sites. This presentation will try to focus on the material culture in different parts of today's Myanmar and the exchanges within those different regions with the war outside of them. They were interconnected with each other and the war around them in terms of trades, visual culture, religious art and architecture, cultural exchanges and adaptation of local alphabets. Early city-states in Myanmar are known for issuing different sizes of silver coins for trade. You can see 4 of those silver coins here. These kind of silver coins in good amounts can be found in all central, lower, and western Myanmar cities. The coin also can be found in early Southeast Asian cities in Thailand and Vietnam, which show the regional trade. The head of the coins are usually framed in dotted circles, the same as early Indian and Persian coins. The coins here feature a bull, conch, throne, rising sun, and silver symbol, which are popular Indian symbols of auspiciousness and religious kinship. These shiny gold plates here were discovered inside a pagoda in central Myanmar. These plates are one of the earliest Buddhist writing in Southeast Asia. 2 plates of the same kinds are on display in the Burma to Myanmar exhibition in the British Museum. The written alphabet here is the Pew, which is an extinct language and alphabet now. This alphabet is adapted from the Southern Indian Brahmid alphabets. The early urban center in Myanmar saw architectural exchanges regarding religious structures. You can see the similarity between the architectures of a Pew city Betano and Nagarjunakonda in Andhra Pradesh, India. It's also similar to the plans of Buddhist university complexes in Nalanda, eastern India. But we cannot compare them to other sites in Asian Myanmar as not enough archaeological research has been done yet. Apart from the international exchanges, the early Myanmar civilization has stylistic exchanges at the local level. These 3 plaques shown here had been placed along the lower platforms of pagodas. These plaques show the connected yet unique style of different regions in Asian Myanmar. The first one is from the Pew city of Bekidia. The second one is from Poridat in today's southern Shan state. The last one is from Jongdu near Bagan in Lower Myanmar. These artworks might have depicted Mara's army who came to disturb the Buddha's enlightenment. Again, these 2 architectural plaques placed on the platforms of the temple show the stylistic connection between Asian Myanmar and the Gupta Empire in northern India due to the posture and rectangular patterning. The first piece is from the Kimbap Mount temple in Bekidia, and the second one is originally from a pagoda on the Lagiri Hill, which is an important archaeological site in the Rakhine cities of Danyawadi. Let me show you some of the pure Buddhist imagery from central Myanmar. The Gupta influence from the northern India can be seen in this sitting Buddha with the leg bending. The style can be compared to those of the images in the Ajanta caves, and the right one here is the typical pure style with one leg on the other. The early Buddha images are either in teaching and discussing gestures or holding his throat. The art touch and gesture, the Bhumipasa mudra, became more important when making merit is getting popular in Bagan and later cities. This slide is about the Buddhist imagery found in Lower Myanmar. The image on the right with the leg pendant show the Gupta connection as the earlier one as the pew. Moreover, it also shows the connection with the Mon Dravadi sculpture in Thailand. The left one is interesting. This one is found in the Thong and is now in the collections of Nandoya Monastery in the Thong. This image of holding the robe with his left hand shows the stylistic influence from Amaravati in India and also with Sri Lankan Buddha images. These are 3 Buddha images found inside a ruin in Chonte near Yangon. Thinking about the location found close to the sea, this image could have been imported through maritime trade or could have been made locally. There is an ongoing debate about whether artifacts found near the Yangon areas are associated with Mon or Pew. However, the scholars suggest that there had been a coexistence of Mon and Pew in that area during the first millennium CE, which supports the idea of moving around and exchanging. Now we are about to see the Buddhist art from the early Rakhine cities. The standard image here with the Indian influence and local intervention is dated around the 700s, according to the inscription on the pedestal. And the image is now at the Lekauze Monastery in Miao. The stone stupa, or the pagoda model like this one, are important devotional offerings in early Rakhine culture, and this kind of stone pagoda can be found abundantly across the Rakhine region. The panel under the domes are often incised with the Yedama verse, which is a popular Buddhist verse widely known as the essence of the Buddhist teachings. Mahayana Buddhist imagery can also be found in the first millennium of Myanmar. The imageries and ideas were originated from China, Himalaya, and India, and they transmitted through the trade routes from Myanmar all the way down to Indonesia. Here are 2 images of future Buddha Metteyya found in Thekitia and Bagan in central Myanmar, respectively. Along with the Buddhist imagery, Hindu sculpture were also associated with the early Myanmar civilization in different regions. The 2 standing Vishnu images were found from Waithali in Rakhine State and they were near the Malay Peninsula region in Lower Myanmar. The first 2 here depict emergence of 3 main Hindu gods from the neighbors of the good Vishnu. The first one is from Thekitia in central Myanmar. The second one is in the pictures was found in the Thong, Lower Myanmar, and it was destroyed by the bombing during the World War II. This type of Hindu sculpture depicting reclining Vishnu was popular across the region from India to Southeast Asia, for example, in Angkor in Cambodia. To conclude, the early civilization in Myanmar oversaw the regional exchanges of idea and material cultures during the first millennium CE using different ways. These early material culture in different regions shaped the future of each culture. For example, Pew was succeeded by Bagan, Waithali was succeeded by Lay Miao, and Mon City were succeeded by the Handawadi kingdoms. This presentation cannot be enough to cover early 1,000 years of Asian Myanmar. This is rather an introduction and attempt to mention the underrepresented culture and people in the archaeology of present-day Myanmar. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Thorzin. And now I'd like to invite Omar Myo to introduce the cultural landscape of Bagan.
Thank you, Heidi. And auspiciousness to you all. First, I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the diligent organizing team at the British Museum for this extraordinary exhibition dedicated to Myanmar. It is a profound honor to be here and share insights into the magnificent city of Bagan while acknowledging the challenges it currently faces. Bagan Cultural Heritage Site is at a bend at the Ayeyarwady River between the hills of Danji Dang and Duyin Dang in central Myanmar. The site is located in the Nyau district of the millennium region and the Bakoku district of the Great region. The property covers 50 square kilometers and the buffer zone has 180 square kilometers. The landscape covers over 3,000 monuments, along with 2 towns and over 40 villages. Bagan is an ancient capital city of the first Union of Myanmar, which was founded in 1044 AD, and went through a major building spree during the 11th to the 13th centuries. So Bagan was inscribed in the World Heritage List in 2019 with the 3 criteria, 3, 4, and 6. So criterion 3 shows that Bagan is an exceptional and continuing testimony on an impressive and unprecedented skill of the significant cultural tradition of Buddhist merit making. And criteria 4 says that Bagan is the most extraordinary, rich, and creative ensemble of monumental Buddhist architecture in the region. And criteria 6 says Bagan is a supreme example of the fundamental historical and living Buddhist tradition of the beliefs associated with the merit making. So I'd like to talk about the pre-Bagan, the few settlements. Before the Bagan dynasty came around the 11th century, there were few settlements in Myanmar. You can find the names of these 19 villages on display with a map in the Bagan Archaeological Museum today. Radiocarbon dating reveals that human settlement in the Bagan region began in the mid-7th century CE. During this time, 2 city-states were established in Upper Myanmar. The people in Bagan adopted an irrigation-based cultivation system, the Buddhist culture from the Pews. Bagan was initially one of several competent city-states in the Pew period till the 10th century CE, when it started assimilating neighboring states to the establishment of the Bagan Empire by King Arorator in 1044, the first union of Myanmar. We can still find few stone stupas which are standing, and some are found in the encased pagodas, especially along the riverbeds in places like Ningaba village, Silindisya village, and an old Bagan property area. So in addition to the monuments, the decorative elements like sculptures, murals, and inscriptions are mostly the way they were originally. These things show how impressive, creative, and advanced the people in Bagan were during that time, and they highlight the special importance of Bagan. The stone inscription of the Maharasika from 1191 AD shares the story of building the pagoda, mentioning the people who contributed, the things they donated, and the people who served. Additionally, it notes that the pagoda was funded by petty lands from many villages to ensure its ongoing support. The inscription is valuable not only for the information of merit making, but also it records the country boundaries of that period and highlights the Myanmar people serving the pagoda. So the stone inscription serves as evidence that the term Myanmar has been in use since the 12th century CE. The origins of Myanmar arts and costume designs can be traced back to the 2 East and West Palik temples. These temples feature terracotta plaques that describe Jataka stories, showcasing the previous and the last lives of Buddha. This marks the beginning of the rich history of artistic expression and costume designs in Myanmar. The murals in the Ningaba Kutelji temple, dating back to the 11th century CE, have stayed in their original location, about 3/4 of them remaining in place. Thanks to UNESCO's proper preservation efforts, the colors of the murals remain vibrant and beautiful, allowing us to appreciate the fine artwork. Even today, you can observe scenes depicting the king in the palace, accompanied by court staff and lively dancers, offering a glimpse into the past. The intangible cultural practices are reflected in Buddhist worship and merit-making activities in Bagan. Renovating pagodas is considered a meritorious deed, and throughout Myanmar's history, pagodas have been regularly renovated. This Lokanan pagoda, which is one of the 4 corner pagodas which demarcate the city of the ancient Bagan, was renovated after the earthquake struck in 2016. So the brilliant art of traditional bamboo scaffolding can be seen today. Bagan is also famous for traditional lacquerware, and another notable intangible cultural heritage of Bagan is the annual festival of the Shisigon Pagoda, which dates back to the Bagan dynasty. In addition to the making offerings, there is a unique practice where money is offered to monks using bamboo sticks arranged in a flower design. This cultural tradition has been passed down through generations as a significant aspect of Bagan heritage. The Lisa Day ceremony in Bagan, characterized by a procession to the pagoda where people carry flowers and water pots, accompanied by music and dances, showcases the rich cultural and religious heritage of the region. So the continuous innovation and the traditional merit makings have some impacts to the monuments of Bagan, and there are some challenges here. So the monuments of Bagan face numerous challenges, including conservation issues, responses to floods and rainfall, a shortage of skilled personnel, and a lack of professionalism among volunteers. These difficulties extend to monument conservation, landscape management, and disaster risk reduction, stemming from floods, non-compliance with regulations, and safety concerns. The collective impact poses significant obstacles to maintaining Bagan's cultural legacy. Further complicating matter is the lack of attention from international heritage organizations such as UNESCO and GCI since 2021, attributed to ongoing political instability in the region, hampering efforts to address Bagan's multifaceted challenges. So the continuous renovation of ancient monuments for several decades posed challenges to their real conservation. In the Ananda Temple, which is the finest arts and architecture in Bagan, the repeated applications of lime wash and gold wash led to the loss of beautiful and historically significant mural paintings. The ink inscription in the middle picture denotes the renovation of the Buddha image in 1928 in the Sulamani Temple, and provides a historical marker indicating a specific event in the temple's timeline that led to unintended consequences for the ancient murals on the wall. And please look at the 3 photos of the meditation cave in Bagan period, called the Miwegu, are taken in 1987 and 2016. During the beautification period in Bagan in the 1990s, the design and architecture of some of the ancient monuments have been changed with additional elements to the original structures, which makes the authenticity of the site weaken. So I give you some examples of the natural disasters happened recently in 2013. So this is the additional challenge confronting Bagan, is the impact of natural disasters, including floods, earthquakes, and heavy rainfall attributed to climate change. Unfortunately, the readiness for disaster risk and subsequent responses to these emergencies remain insufficient, posing a significant vulnerability to the protection of the majority of the monuments. So Bagan is a complex, layered cultural landscape that also incorporates living communities and contemporary urban areas. The sustainable tourism strategy, archaeological risk plan, agricultural sector strategy, and heritage impact assessment system are still pending completion and or full implementation. Thank you very much. Visiting my share.
So thank you very much, Omomyo, for raising those issues. It was really thought-provoking. I think, I think it raises some important questions here also about other sites. As Omar mentioned, since 2021, Dozin, conflicts have impacted the conservation of heritage sites. So I was just wondering, could you say a little bit more about the management of ancient sites in, for example, Rakhine State and at the ancient Pew cities today?
So like in Rakhine State, there is ongoing conflicts for nearly a decade now. So there are some cases like the cultural properties in the Nyawadi, Wedali, and Nyau area are affected directly by the weapons during the conflicts or the indirectly like the occupations of the forces inside the cultural properties and all the.
When you say weapons, what do you mean, like bombing?
Yeah. So like so something like that, and also like occupation of the cultural property by the forces, some significant size. And also like more recently, we have at least two reported cases in Thailand, which is one of World Heritage sites. So there was two arson attack in later last year and early this year within the World Heritage property zone. And also like before the 2021, the Thailand had important discovery of the guardian image by the Palace Gate, but the research are suspended by the ongoing conflicts. Yeah.
Mm. So it's a real security threat to ongoing research.
Yeah.
It's not safe to practice in that area anymore. Okay. Okay. And that, so I mean that there's also another question, I think, for Onma. You mentioned that the criteria 6 for Bagan's nomination acknowledges that Bagan is still a very important living pilgrimage center of national importance. And I know that many Myanmar people believe that they should visit Bagan at least once in their life. Can you say a bit more about how the DOA actually manages, the DOA being the Department of Archaeology, how does it manage the use of temples for rituals? For example, you showed pictures there of the gilding of stupas and Buddha images. How does the DOA actually manage this living pilgrimage center?
So after the inscription of the World Heritage List in 2019, so before that, the Department of Archaeology and UNESCO, ICROM, ICH, those experts, they had a very good discussions, a series of discussions actually, to decide which monuments should be like living monuments and like active monuments, or which monuments should be like inactive, or this is just an ancient monument. So then, after a series of discussions with the local communities as well, and then Department of Archaeology decides that there are like 48 monuments which have keeping this tradition of making merits alive through generations, and those places are already shining with timeless gold. And the history of they have the history of the celebrations of the merit makings, and then they are also regarded as shared treasures that belong to everyone in the country. So that kind of monuments, living monuments, and kind of this ICH called intangible cultural heritage practices and the religious things, merit making things can be done. But they need the approval, prior approval from the Department of Archaeology to what to do on those monuments, because those monuments are they are also the ancient monuments as well from the Bagan period. But on the other hand, inactive pagodas are different. So they are kind of on their own, away from the community. So no religious activities happen there. And we don't have any records about their history, or not even their names. So they have only the inventory numbers given by the Department of Archaeology. So something like they are standing apart from the vibrant Buddhist community, vibrant life of the Buddhist community. So these are called like inactive monuments. So these for those monuments, if somebody wants to do some maintenance, so Department of Archaeology will be the main supervisor or main key institution to look after them, and then they have to conserve in the with the international standards, with these conservation guidelines mentioned in the integrated management framework of the World Heritage dossier.
That's really interesting. I mean, there's thousands of temples at Bagan, so I mean, a list of 48 is a helpful start. But I wonder if there could be actually many more in the future. Do we see any examples of more local community groups coming forward and asking whether more could be designated?
Yeah. It is very likely to have more additional monuments to be from the inactive monuments to be active monuments, like living monuments. Yeah, because Myanmar people are very fond of making merits in Bagan.
As we've seen today, over the first 1,000 years, the foundations were really well laid for merit making. So yes, it's really nice. Thank you so much. It's really nice to make that connection with contemporary times. Actually, just linked to, I just thought of another question linked to what Thorsin was talking about. Have we seen any sign of post-2021 conflicts affecting Bagan at all?
Yeah. So in the very first period of after this 2021, there were some movements in Bagan, political movements in Bagan, and some people lost their lives due to this conflict things. But after that, I think all the parties involved in this political movements realized that they need to safeguard the Bagan heritage and monuments. So after that, I haven't seen any kinds of this turbulence or conflicts in the Bagan heritage site. So far, fortunately, Bagan is safe.
Okay, that's good to hear, and perhaps that's the benefit of it being such an important living site of and merit making still today, that there's a general consensus that, hey, let's keep it that way.
Yes, because now this is a season of the festivals in Bagan. So Bagan has a lot of pilgrims all over from the country, and then full of Myanmar pilgrims there. So Bagan is still very vibrant and lively environment there.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Thorsin Almamio. That's wonderful to hear that, and let's wish for a long and sustainable living heritage in Myanmar today. Thank you both very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.